In the vast, incomprehensible tapestry of existence, there are threads so deep and tangled that they evade even the brightest minds. As you drift towards sleep, you will be pulled deeper into the unknown. You are about to explore mysteries that challenge the very core of reality itself, each more unsettling and unresolved than the last. Will you awaken from this descent, or will you remain forever lost in the abyss? Section 1. The unsolvable paradox of time. Time, what is it truly? For all of humanity's advancements, time remains an unyielding, unknowable force. We experience it as a linear progression, yet what does that really mean? Einstein's theory of relativity asserts that time, as we know it, is a mere illusion, a construct of our perception. Objects move through it, but time itself bends and warps depending on where you stand on the surface of a planet, in the depths of space, or near the event horizon of a black hole. You've been taught to think of time as something fixed, absolute, an eternal march forward. But consider this: if you could travel faster than light, if you could surpass the speed limit of the universe itself, what would that do to time? Would you leap backward, like the character in a story who defies the author's will, rewriting their past with a simple thought? Would the past and future blur into one, making both irrelevant? This concept isn't just the domain of science fiction, it's grounded in real science. According to relativity, as you approach the speed of light, time for you would begin to slow. If you could reach it, time would essentially stop altogether. But what does it mean for time to stop? Does this mean you have truly experienced all of time at once? If so, how can you differentiate the future from the present if time no longer moves? Consider the thought experiment of the twin paradox. One twin stays on Earth and the other embarks on a journey through space, moving near the speed of light. Upon return, the twin who traveled will be younger than the twin who stayed behind. How is it possible for a person to experience a different amount of time than another? What does it even mean to age? Is aging merely a linear progression through an invisible, immovable construct? Or does the very idea of time fracture when viewed from extreme velocities? These aren't just idle speculations. They are real, experimentally confirmed phenomena. But in trying to understand time, do we simply embrace a different version of the illusion we once clung to? Time is broken, and perhaps that's the most disturbing thought of all. If we could step outside time itself, if we could observe it as we might, a painting, would we even recognize it as something worth understanding? What if time, as we understand it, doesn't even exist in the way we think it does? So, ask yourself, is time something we measure, or something that merely measures us? Section 2. The vanishing point of consciousness. What are you really? It's easy to believe you are the sum of your thoughts, your memories, your actions. You are conscious, aware of your existence, and you feel that this awareness defines you. But what if consciousness itself is an illusion, a fleeting, transient moment that disappears the moment you attempt to grasp it? In the realm of neuroscience, there is a curious phenomenon known as the hard problem of consciousness, coined by philosopher David Chalmers. The easy problems, the scientific study of how we process information, react to stimuli, or perform tasks, are manageable. But the hard problem? It's understanding why any of it feels like something. Why does information processing produce an experience of color, sound, or emotion? Why does the brain, an organ made of neurons and chemical interactions, feel like you? Think about it for a moment. You can describe the sensation of seeing a color, but what exactly is that experience? How? Can a group of atoms firing off electrical impulses give rise to the vivid perception of red, blue, or green? What is this inner life, this qualia, that you live in, breathe in, and exist through? How does it arise from a purely material system? It's tempting to look for answers in the brain, the seat of our thoughts, but that only brings more questions. Neuroscientific studies have mapped the regions of the brain responsible for language, movement, and memory, yet they haven't explained why these actions result in conscious experience. Where is the self in all of this? Where is the observer, the you who watches your thoughts, dreams, and actions? Consider a startling experiment by Benjamin Libet in the 1980 seconds. Libet asked participants to make a simple, voluntary decision whether to move their hand or not while measuring their brain activity. What he found was this. The brain's decision to move the hand occurred before the subject was consciously aware of it. In other words, the brain decided for you. The conscious experience of making the decision came after the brain had already set the wheels in motion. What does that imply about the concept of free will? If your brain makes decisions for you before you are aware of them, are you truly the one in control? Are you the conscious experiencer of your life? Or are you simply a passive observer, witnessing a series of events that have already been set into motion? This leads to an unsettling possibility. Consciousness may not be the driver of thought and action, but merely a spectator, an illusion of control, a convenient narrative we tell ourselves to make sense of a world that operates beyond our comprehension. Perhaps the mind is just a passive bystander, experiencing the unfolding of events without ever being the true cause of them. And what of the nature of the self? Where does it reside? Are you truly the sum of your memories, your identity? Or is this self merely a continuous construction, held together by the threads of perception and memory, but ultimately no more real than a fictional character in a story? Consciousness is slipping away from you, folding in on itself, leaving only questions in its wake. And if you can't trust the very nature of your awareness, then what can you trust about your own existence? So, can you even know that you are conscious, or is that just another illusion? Section 3. The paradox of free will. You are told that you have free will, that you are in control, that your actions are your own, determined by your desires, your thoughts, your will to act. But what if this assumption is a lie, a comforting narrative we construct to make sense of our existence? The idea of free will is deeply ingrained in human culture, philosophy, and religion. From ancient Greek philosophers like Socrates and Plato, who debated the nature of choice and destiny, to modern thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who argued that we are condemned to be free, the notion of free will has shaped the way we view ourselves as autonomous agents in the world. But when we begin to peel back the layers of this belief, we are confronted with uncomfortable truths that shatter the very foundation of human agency. To understand the crux of the free will paradox, consider this. Every decision you make, from the most trivial to the most life-altering, is the result of complex processes that lie far beyond your conscious control. Your genetic makeup, your environment, your upbringing, each of these factors has shaped the way your brain processes information and makes choices. But what part of this is truly you? What part of your decision-making is a product of free will, and what part is simply the result of deterministic forces operating behind the scenes? Consider the work of neuroscientists like Benjamin Libet, who discovered, as we explored in the previous section, that the brain makes decisions before you are even aware of them. In one of his most famous experiments, Libet measured the brain's readiness potential, a signal in the brain that indicates a forthcoming movement before participants consciously decided to act. What Libet found was that the readiness potential occurred up to 350 milliseconds before the participant was consciously aware of the decision to move. The brain made the decision before the person had any awareness of it. This finding raises an unsettling question. If the brain decides before you do, are you truly in control of your own actions? If your decisions are made by unconscious processes, what does that say about your autonomy? How can you claim to have free will when your choices are essentially preordained by your biology and environment long before you're even aware of them? And this isn't just about small, automatic decisions. This extends to the very core of who you are. Your likes, your dislikes, your fears, your desires, each of these is influenced by factors over which you have no control. Your genes, your early childhood experiences, your exposure to different ideas and cultures, they all play a role in shaping the person you become. In other words, you were never truly free to choose who you are, because everything about you, from your personality to your worldview, was shaped by forces beyond your control. This deterministic view of human behavior was famously explored by philosopher B.F. Skinner, who argued that human actions are shaped entirely by environmental stimuli and reinforcement, not by free will. According to Skinner, the illusion of choice is simply the result of our inability to recognize the subtle, invisible forces that guide our behavior. Just as a rat in a Skinner box presses a lever for a food reward, you too are driven by invisible forces, your past, your environment, your biology, that manipulate your every decision. But even beyond this, we must confront the implications of quantum mechanics, which challenges our very understanding of determinism. Quantum theory proposes that at the microscopic level, events occur in a probabilistic manner, Particles don't have definite positions until they are observed. This inherent uncertainty opens up the possibility that at the quantum level, our thoughts and actions may not be completely deterministic after all. But does this quantum randomness offer us true free will, or is it simply another layer of chaos, a more complicated illusion of choice? The paradox here is both profound and disorienting. We are simultaneously at the mercy of forces beyond our control, yet we cling to the belief that we are masters of our fate. What if free will is nothing more than an elaborate illusion, a comforting lie we tell ourselves to feel empowered in an indifferent universe? If your thoughts are just a cascade of deterministic events shaped by biology, environment, and chance, then what does that say about the very essence of who you are? Are you a puppet of your brain, or something more? And if you aren't truly free, then what is left to make you human? Would you be able to recognize the absence of free will if it no longer existed, or would you simply continue making decisions, unaware of the cage you've created for yourself? Section 4. The illusion of memory. What if your memories are not as solid, as reliable as you believe them to be? You've lived a life full of experiences, each one woven into the tapestry of your identity, but how much of it can you truly trust? The past, as you know it, might not be the same as what you remember. The very nature of memory is malleable, vulnerable, and disturbingly unreliable. Consider the phenomenon known as the memory illusion. At its core, this is the idea that your mind can deceive you into believing that you remember something when, in fact, it never happened, or that you have changed the details of a memory without even realizing it. Psychologists like Elizabeth Loftus have demonstrated the ease with which human memory can be manipulated. In her studies, Loftus has shown that it's possible to implant false memories in people, making them believe that they experienced events that never actually occurred. Using simple suggestions, researchers can convince individuals that they were lost in a shopping mall, or that they were involved in a car accident, events that they have no recollection of, but which they now believe to be true. This is no mere trick. It speaks to a profound and unsettling aspect of human consciousness. If we can be made to remember things that never happened, then what does that say about the memories we do believe are real? How can we be sure that the life we think we've lived is anything more than a patchwork of half-truths and distorted recollections? And it's not just the insertion of false memories that should worry you. Memory is constantly in flux. Every time you retrieve a memory, it is slightly altered, influenced by your current state of mind, the passage of time, and external factors. When you recall a moment from your childhood, you aren't simply accessing a static file. Instead, your brain is reconstructing the event, piecing it together based on fragmented information. With every recollection, your mind adds, deletes, and distorts details. This process, called reconsolidation, means that no memory is ever fixed or permanent. Each time you remember something, you're changing it, whether you want to or not. This process becomes even more insidious when you consider the implications for your own identity. If your memories are unreliable, then what does that say about the sense of self they create? If the memories that make up who you are can be altered, fabricated, or forgotten, then are you even the same person from one moment to the next? The you that you know, the person who remembers and reflects upon their life, is nothing more than an ongoing construction, an ever-shifting narrative shaped by an unreliable archive of events. There's also the question of the forgotten memories. We all experience moments when we can't recall a specific detail, a person's name, or an event. But are these moments of forgetfulness truly lost? Or are they simply buried in the recesses of the mind, inaccessible to conscious recall? Neuropsychologists argue that we do not lose memories as we age, but rather that they become inaccessible, that is, we cannot retrieve them when we need them. This raises the possibility that the true scope of our experiences might be far larger than we can consciously access. What are you forgetting? What parts of your past are hidden from you, locked away in some dark corner of your brain? And, more disturbingly, who or what has control over which memories you remember and which you forget? Then there are the cases of false memory syndrome, where people become convinced of events that never took place, often with devastating consequences. These false memories can shape people's identities, relationships, and entire lifetimes. For instance, a person might remember being abused by a parent, only to discover later that the memory was fabricated, yet it shaped their view of themselves and the world for decades. If a single fabricated memory can change the course of a life, what does this say about the overall fragility of memory and identity? The most chilling aspect of this is that your memories are not just fragments of your past, they are the foundation of your reality. Without memory, you would have no sense of continuity, no sense of who you are, where you came from, or where you're going. Memory is the thread that ties your existence together. But if this thread is fraying, if the very fabric of your self-perception is built on unreliable, shifting sand, then what is left? How much of your life is truly your own? If your memories can be twisted, rewritten, or erased without your knowledge, then what does that say about the nature of your identity? Are you just a reflection of the fragmented, distorted past you can barely hold on to? Or is there something deeper, something unknowable, lurking just beyond your conscious awareness? And if you can't trust your memories, then how can you trust anything you believe about your past? Section 5. The collapse of objective reality. What if the reality you live in isn't quite real? What if everything you see, feel, and experience is a construct, shaped by your senses and your mind in ways that are beyond your control? The concept of an objective reality, the world as it truly is, independent of our perception, has long been a cornerstone of human understanding. Yet what if this idea is fundamentally flawed? A comforting illusion that shields you from the terrifying possibility that reality is not fixed, but an unstable and subjective mirage. At the heart of this unsettling thought lies the paradox of perception. Your senses, the very mechanisms through which you interact with the world, are not passive receptors of truth. Instead, they are actively involved in creating the world you experience. Consider visual perception, for example. Your eyes do not see the world directly. They gather light, and that light is then processed by the brain, which constructs an image from the information it receives. But the brain does not simply reflect the world as it is, it interprets it. It fills in gaps, makes assumptions, and even distorts the image based on past experiences, expectations, and biases. This is known as perceptual constancy. When you look at an object, your brain ensures that it appears stable and unchanging, even as the light hitting it varies. But this stability is an illusion. The object's color, shape, and size may shift depending on the angle, lighting, and context, yet you perceive it as constant. The brain makes these corrections automatically, without you ever realizing it. Your perception, then, is not a direct window into the world, but a filtered, altered version of reality, shaped by your brain's interpretations and assumptions. This concept extends beyond vision. Auditory perception, for instance, is similarly malleable. You hear not only what is presented to your ears, but what your brain expects to hear. This is why people can hear words in meaningless sounds, a phenomenon known as pareidolia, or why a song can sound different to two people standing in the same room, based on their internal biases and interpretations. But these illusions don't stop at sensory perception. Even the basic structure of time and space that you rely on to navigate your world is an act of perception. You have been taught to believe that space is three-dimensional and that time moves in one direction, from past to present to future. But what if this is just another interpretation, another layer of illusion placed over a deeper, unknowable truth? Take, for example, the famous thought experiment known as the brain in a vat. In this scenario, a person's brain is removed from their body and placed in a vat of life-sustaining fluid. The brain is then connected to a computer that stimulates it with sensory input, creating a completely immersive virtual reality for the brain to experience. The person in this scenario would have no idea that their perceptions of the world were artificial. They would experience a real world, but it would be nothing more than a simulation, a mind-created version of reality, entirely divorced from the true external world. Now, this may seem like a far-fetched thought experiment, but the disturbing truth is that modern neuroscience has revealed that the brain does not passively receive sensory information, it actively constructs it. The brain fills in the gaps, predicting what you will see, hear, and feel based on past experience. It is constantly creating your perception of reality, not merely observing it. And what happens if the brain constructs a world that does not align with the objective reality outside? What if your experiences, your very consciousness, are not an accurate reflection of the world at all, but a complex and carefully crafted simulation, distorted by your brain's processes? This idea isn't just philosophical speculation. In 2007, neuroscientist Olaf Blanke conducted an experiment that revealed the brain's ability to create a false sense of reality. By stimulating a part of the brain known as the temporoparietal junction, Blanke was able to induce a feeling of out-of-body experience in participants. The participants reported feeling as though they were floating outside their own bodies, observing themselves from a distance. This phenomenon, known as depersonalization, occurs naturally in certain neurological disorders, suggesting that our sense of self, our experience of being in our body, can be artificially manipulated by the brain. This raises a chilling possibility. If the brain can create the experience of an entire reality, can it also create the experience of your own self? The implication is profound and disconcerting. Your perception of reality, your experience of being alive, may not be an accurate reflection of the world at all. What if your reality is a construct, shaped by your mind and senses, manipulated by unseen forces within your own brain? What if everything you perceive is nothing more than an elaborate illusion, a dreamlike simulation that bears no true connection to the outside world? And if your reality is a subjective construct, then where does the line between the real and the imagined end? What does it mean to say that something is real when your perception of it is entirely subjective? What is the truth of the world if your mind is the ultimate creator of your reality? Is it possible to ever truly know the world as it is? Or are we all trapped in a never-ending cycle of self-deception, endlessly, creating and recreating a world that only exists in our minds? Section 6. The paradox of knowledge. You've been taught that knowledge is power, that through learning, understanding, and the accumulation of facts, you can gain mastery over your life and the world around you. But what if knowledge itself is the very thing that traps you? What if the more you know, the less you understand, and the deeper you sink into a state of existential confusion? This paradox of knowledge has been a staple of philosophical inquiry for millennia. Socrates famously declared, "I know that I am intelligent, because I know that I know nothing." This statement wasn't just a humble admission of his own limitations, it was a profound recognition of the nature of knowledge itself. The more one learns, the more one realizes the vast expanse of what remains unknown. The pursuit of truth, in this light, becomes not an ascent to enlightenment, but a descent into deeper and deeper confusion, as the layer of understanding reveals yet another layer of mystery. Consider the field of quantum mechanics. In this strange, bewildering realm of subatomic particles, the more scientists discover, the more the laws of nature seem to defy common sense. Particles can be in two places at once, exist in multiple states simultaneously, and influence each other instantaneously across vast distances, as though time and space themselves are not as solid as we once believed. The more physicists uncover about the quantum world, the more they realize that the very foundations of reality are built on paradoxes, uncertainties, and contradictions. As the physicist Niels Bohr put it, "Anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it." This phenomenon extends beyond physics. In the realm of philosophy, thinkers like Immanuel Kant argued that our understanding of the world is inherently limited by the structure of our own minds. Kant's theory of noumena and phenomena proposed that we can never truly know the thing in itself, the objective reality that exists beyond our perception. All we can know is the way it appears to us, shaped and filtered by our senses, our language, and our cognitive structures. The more we try to break through these barriers and uncover the true nature of reality, the further we seem to be from any definitive understanding. This notion that knowledge itself is a kind of prison is explored in the concept of epistemic closure. As you acquire more knowledge, you create a web of interconnected beliefs, concepts, and assumptions. Each new piece of information adds to this web, but it also limits the scope of your understanding. You can no longer see the world in the same way you did before, and this altered perception locks you into a particular worldview, one that is difficult to escape. The more you learn, the harder it becomes to imagine things outside of the framework you've built for yourself. And this is where the real paradox lies. The pursuit of knowledge, which is meant to free you, may actually be what binds you. Every fact you acquire, every piece of understanding you gain, is just another link in the chain that binds you to a specific way of seeing the world. You become increasingly trapped in your own mental constructions, your worldview narrowing until you can no longer think outside of the parameters you've set for yourself. This paradox is perhaps most starkly illustrated in the concept of infinite regress. Whenever you seek knowledge, you are inevitably left asking more questions. Every answer begets more questions, and those questions lead to even more answers, and so on, ad infinitum. No matter how much you know, you are always confronted with an endless series of uncertainties. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know, and the deeper the abyss grows. Consider a simple example: the study of history. Every time you learn something about the past, you realize how much has been forgotten, lost, or misrepresented. You might uncover new documents, new perspectives, and new interpretations. But each discovery only leads to more questions about what is true and what has been distorted. The deeper you dig into history, the more you come to understand that your knowledge of it is inherently flawed, incomplete, and contingent upon subjective interpretation. The same principle applies to your own life. The more you reflect on your past, the more you question the accuracy of your memories, the intentions behind your actions, and the meaning of your choices. Each moment you attempt to analyze or understand reveals new complexities and contradictions. You can never truly know yourself, because every new insight you gain is also a new barrier to complete self-understanding. As you dive deeper into the pursuit of knowledge, you may find that the only certainty is uncertainty itself. The more you know, the more you understand that knowledge is not an absolute truth. It is a shifting, fragile construct, ever subject to change, reinterpretation, and dissolution. So, ask yourself, what happens when the very act of knowing becomes an obstacle to understanding? When you reach the point where every answer only raises more questions, where do you go from there? Section 7. The silent scream of existence. What if your very existence, the fact that you are here, breathing, thinking, experiencing life, is a cosmic accident, a fleeting, meaningless speck in the infinite void? You've been conditioned to believe that life has meaning, that your existence serves a purpose, that you are part of a grand design. But what if all of it is a cruel illusion, one that provides comfort in the face of the unbearable truth that nothing matters at all? The existential crisis is not merely a moment of doubt, it is the profound realization that the universe is vast, indifferent, and utterly devoid of inherent meaning. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus have explored this terrifying void in their writings. Sartre famously declared that existence precedes essence, meaning that we are born into the world without purpose, and we must create meaning through our actions. But even this creation of meaning is futile when we confront the absurdity of existence. Camus, in his exploration of the absurd, argued that the very act of searching for meaning in a meaningless universe is itself absurd. We strive, we search, we hope, but we are ultimately confronted with the silence of an uncaring cosmos. Consider the vastness of the universe. The Milky Way galaxy alone contains over 100 billion stars, each with its own planetary system, possibly harboring life. But that is just one galaxy in a universe of billions, and in this immensity, where is your place? You are a speck of dust on a tiny rock, orbiting a star that is, in turn, orbiting the center of a galaxy that is but a flicker in the endless cosmic ocean. Your life is a blip barely noticeable, and even less significant. If humanity were to vanish tomorrow, would the universe even notice? Would the stars pause in their endless dance? Would the planets slow in their orbits? Or would they simply continue on, indifferent to the brief spark of human existence? This realization of the cosmic insignificance of life is not new. It has plagued philosophers for centuries. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus argued that death is nothing to fear, for when we are alive, death is not, and when death comes, we are not. The moment you die, there is no conscious awareness of your demise. The you that experiences life simply ceases to exist. And yet, you cling to the illusion of self, of continuity, of meaning. This existential dread intensifies when we confront the sheer randomness of the universe. You exist because, at some point in the distant past, a chain of events occurred that allowed your ancestors to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genetic material. But none of this was inevitable. It could have all gone another way. A meteor could have wiped out your ancestors. A mutation could have led to a different evolutionary path. The entire tapestry of life, including your own existence, is the result of an almost incomprehensible number of factors that happen to align in just the right way at just the right time. And when you truly understand this, you must ask, what purpose does any of this serve? Is life simply the result of chaotic, blind forces with no greater meaning or direction? Consider the Earth itself. It is a unique planet, rich in life, orbiting a star that is perfectly positioned for life to flourish. But this perfect position is simply an accident of cosmic physics. The Earth is not special because of some divine design. It is special because it happens to be in the habitable zone of a star, the result of countless random events, such as the formation of a stable solar system and the right conditions for life to emerge. If Earth was slightly closer or farther from the Sun, life as we know it would not exist. The conditions necessary for life are incredibly fragile. Is it truly meaningful that life exists here, or is it just a statistical anomaly, a result of cosmic luck? Now, think about your own life. You are born, you live, and you die. But what is the point of it all? What lasting impact can you possibly have in the face of such overwhelming insignificance? You may strive to leave a legacy, to create something of value, to build meaning into your life. But even the greatest human achievements, the pyramids, the works of Shakespeare, the discoveries of science will eventually fade into nothingness. The Earth itself will one day be consumed by the sun, and the stars will eventually burn out. All that you have known, all that you have done, will be lost to the void. The universe does not care. It does not need your existence, your meaning, your efforts. The universe continues on, indifferent to your brief life. And yet, you continue to live, to search for meaning, to find purpose in the emptiness. But why? Is it because you cannot bear the thought of living in a universe without meaning? Or is it because the very act of searching for meaning provides a fleeting sense of comfort in the face of an overwhelming, uncaring reality? The truth is unbearable, but you cling to the lie because it is all you have. You can only pretend that your life matters, that there is something beyond this moment, that there is a purpose to your existence. But as the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Is it better to live in the delusion of meaning, or to face the truth that you are but a speck of dust in an infinite void? What will you do when the weight of this truth presses down on you? Will you continue pretending, or will you finally accept the silence of existence? Section 8. The death of the self. What is the self? You live, breathe, and think within the boundaries of what you call yourself. A body, a mind, a consciousness, an identity. But is this you really you? Or is it an elaborate illusion, a fleeting construction that dissolves into nothingness the moment you try to define it? What if the self is not a singular, stable entity, but a complex web of shifting, fragmented experiences, woven together by the fragile thread of memory, perception, and society's expectations? Consider the work of psychologist William James, who argued that the self is not a fixed thing but a process. James referred to it as the stream of consciousness, a continuous flow of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that seem to create the illusion of a coherent self. But is this stream really continuous, or is it merely a series of disconnected moments, falsely stitched together by your brain to form a narrative that feels cohesive? What happens when you strip away the narrative, when you stop labeling and defining yourself as you? What is left? This question has been central to philosophical inquiry for centuries. The Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self, challenges the very foundation of personal identity. According to Buddhism, the self is a collection of impermanent phenomena, thoughts, sensations, and experiences that are constantly changing. There is no eternal, unchanging self at the core of your being. Instead, you are an ever-evolving process, shaped by your interactions with the world and your own fleeting perceptions. This is not just a spiritual insight, it is a profound realization that dismantles the very idea of individual, unchanging identity. But if the self is an illusion, then who are you really? Are you merely a product of your environment, your genes, and your experiences? Are you nothing more than a fleeting collection of thoughts, emotions, and memories that dissolve as soon as you try to grasp them? What happens to your sense of identity when you realize that there is no fixed you to hold on to? The concept of the self is further destabilized by neuroscience. Studies have shown that the brain constantly rewrites and reorganizes the very idea of selfhood. Your sense of who you are is constructed in real time, based on the information your brain receives from your senses, your memories, and your environment. There is no central self or soul sitting in the driver's seat, making decisions and observing the world. Instead, your brain creates the experience of selfhood from a multitude of competing processes. Your self is a collection of interconnected systems, cognitive, emotional, and sensory, each influencing the others, but none of them capable of standing alone as the true essence of who you are. This reality becomes even more disconcerting when you consider the phenomenon of dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Individuals with this condition experience a fragmented sense of self, where different personalities or identities emerge and take control of the person's actions, thoughts, and behaviors. These personalities may be vastly different from one another, with distinct memories, traits, and preferences. In extreme cases, a person may have no memory of actions or events that occurred while another identity was in control. What does this tell us about the nature of the self? If a person can have multiple, distinct identities within a single body, then what is the true self? Is the self truly an integrated, coherent entity, or is it simply an illusion created by the mind to make sense of a chaotic and fragmented existence? Even more troubling is the concept of the ego, a construct of the mind that shapes your sense of self. The ego is the part of you that believes it is separate from others, that it is unique, that it has control over its actions and choices. But what if the ego is merely a mental construct, a defense mechanism created by the brain to protect you from the overwhelming complexity and unpredictability of life? If the ego is not real, if it is merely a tool for survival, a psychological strategy, then what happens to your sense of individuality when you strip away this protective layer? Who are you without your ego, without the illusion of separateness? The concept of ego death is central to many spiritual traditions, particularly in the practice of meditation and psychedelics. Ego death is described as a profound experience where the boundaries between the self and the world dissolve, leaving the individual with a sense of unity and interconnectedness. This experience is often described as transcendent, but also terrifying. To experience ego death is to confront the realization that the self you've spent your life building is nothing more than a fragile, temporary construct. In this state, the individual may feel as though they are one with the universe, but they may also experience a profound sense of loss and disorientation. If the ego is the foundation of your identity, then what happens when that foundation is torn away? And yet, despite these unsettling insights, you continue to cling to the illusion of selfhood. You continue to define yourself by your thoughts, your experiences, your memories. But in the back of your mind, you must ask, what is the self, really? If the self is nothing more than a fragile construct, shaped by memory, perception, and external forces, then what happens when the construct collapses? What remains when you let go of the ego and the identity it creates? If you are not your thoughts, your memories, or your ego, then who are you? And what does it mean to truly exist in a world where the very foundation of your selfhood is built on nothing but fragile, shifting illusions? Section 9. The silent death of the universe. You've been taught that the universe is vast, eternal, and full of wonder, that it has meaning, structure, and purpose, whether that purpose is a divine plan or simply the unfolding of physical laws. But what if all of that is a comforting illusion? What if the universe, in its vastness, is not eternal but doomed to die, and in its death, it takes everything with it? Your existence, your memories, your very sense of self? The theory of the heat death of the universe presents one of the most bleak and disturbing views of the cosmos. According to this theory, the universe will eventually reach a state of maximum entropy, a point at which all stars have burned out, all energy has dissipated, and all matter has spread out into an even, featureless void. There will be no more light, no more heat, no more life. The universe will become an endless, dark, frozen expanse, silent and lifeless. It is difficult to grasp the true scale of this inevitable end. The universe, as we know it, is already 13.8 billion years old. It is expanding, stretching outward into the unknown, faster and faster. But this expansion, far from being a cause for hope, is actually a sign of decay. The galaxies are moving away from each other, and eventually all the stars will run out of fuel. The process of stellar fusion, the very process that powers life on Earth and the stars themselves, will come to an end. The light that once bathed the cosmos will extinguish, leaving only cold and darkness. And here's the truly horrifying part. There is nothing you can do about it. Nothing. Your existence, your entire species, your planet, your sun, is a brief flash in the grand timeline of the universe. It's like a single grain of sand on an endless beach. One moment, the sand is there, and the next, it's gone washed away by the inevitable passage of time. This is not some distant abstract event. The heat death of the universe is already underway, and we are helpless to stop it. You may wonder what this means for you. If everything is doomed to die, if the universe is on an irreversible path toward ultimate destruction, what is the point of your existence? What purpose can there be in the pursuit of knowledge, in the creation of art, in the building of societies, when it will all be for nothing? The stars will fade, the galaxies will collide, and the universe will eventually reach a state where no life, no thought, no experience is possible. Perhaps you find solace in the idea that humanity can transcend the limitations of Earth, that we will colonize other planets, travel to distant stars, and achieve some kind of cosmic immortality. But this hope too is futile. The heat death of the universe is not something that can be avoided by moving to another planet or star system. It is a universal law, an inescapable fate for all that exists. Even if humanity survives for another few million years, what then? Will we have reached the stars only to find them dimming and dying, leaving us no place to go? Will we have achieved technological greatness, only to face the eternal emptiness that comes with the death of all things? The death of the universe is not just an abstract concept for future generations. It is a death that you are already living with, whether you know it or not. Your life, your consciousness, your thoughts, all of these are temporary, fragile, and doomed to be consumed by the entropy of existence. You may try to find meaning in the small things, your relationships, your accomplishments, your fleeting moments of joy. But in the end, they too will be swept away by the tide of time. In the grand scale of the cosmos, everything you've ever known, everything you've ever loved, will eventually vanish, leaving nothing but an empty void. This is not a tragedy that happens at the end of time. It is the inevitable truth of existence itself. The universe is slowly dying, and you trapped in this brief moment are a witness to its slow, silent collapse. So, ask yourself, what is the point of living, of striving, of existing, when the universe itself is dying? And if the universe must die, what does that say about the meaning of your life, when your existence is but a fleeting moment in an endless, uncaring cosmos? Section 10. The impossibility of truth. You've been told that truth is something you can find, something you can know, something solid and unchanging. Truth, you're taught, is objective, something that exists independently of your beliefs, perceptions, or desires. But what if truth is not something to be found, but something that eludes you forever? What if the very concept of truth is a mirage, a construct created by the limitations of your mind, distorted by your perceptions, and ultimately unreachable? At the heart of this dilemma lies the problem of perception. You experience the world through your senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. But your senses are far from perfect. They distort, they filter, they interpret the raw data of the universe in ways that may be far from accurate. The famous thought experiment known as the brain in a vat illustrates this well. Imagine that your brain is removed from your body and placed in a vat of life-sustaining fluid, connected to a supercomputer that feeds it sensory input. Your brain would experience the world just as you do now, seeing, hearing, touching, but none of it would be real. It would all be a simulation, a constructed version of reality, with no direct connection to the outside world. This raises a chilling question. How can you know that your perception of the world is not a simulation, a distortion, or even an outright fabrication? How can you trust your senses when they can be tricked, manipulated, or fooled? The answer, of course, is that you can't. The very nature of perception is such that you are never directly in contact with the world as it is. You are always interacting with an interpretation of it, a version filtered through your senses, your brain, and your mind. In this sense, what you call truth is nothing more than your brain's best guess about what's out there. It's an illusion, a shadow, something you chase but can never truly catch. The philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that this problem is inherent in the very structure of human cognition. He proposed that we can never know the thing in itself, the objective reality that exists beyond our perception. All we can know are the appearances, the phenomena shaped by our minds and senses. This idea, known as epistemic idealism, suggests that the truth is always mediated by our mental faculties. What we take to be the objective world is, in fact, a subjective experience, shaped by the limitations and biases of our minds. But it doesn't stop there. The problem of truth extends to language itself. Language, the very tool you use to communicate and understand the world, is inherently flawed. Words are abstractions, symbols that stand in for things, but they can never fully capture the essence of what they represent. When you say tree, for example, the word is merely a label for an object in the world, a label that is shaped by your culture, your experiences, and your individual perspective. The word tree does not convey the full lived experience of the tree itself. It cannot. It is a mere approximation, a mental construct that you use to interact with the world. In fact, language is so limited that it can create entire realities that are divorced from the actual world. Consider the concept of reality television. The word reality suggests that the content is a direct representation of the real world, but in truth, it is a heavily edited, scripted, and manipulated version of reality. The very word reality becomes a lie, distorting the truth of what is being shown. This is not just the case with television, it happens with every form of communication. Stories, media, history, each of these is shaped by interpretation, bias, and perspective. The idea that you can access an untainted, objective truth is nothing more than an illusion. The most disturbing consequence of this is the realization that all human knowledge is built on a foundation of uncertainty. Every fact, every idea, every belief is subject to interpretation. Your understanding of the world, your scientific theories, your philosophical systems, none of them are immune from the distortions of perception, language, and cognition. And this leads to the unsettling conclusion that you may never truly know anything with certainty. You cannot trust your senses, your thoughts, or even the very words you use to describe the world. The scientific method, which has long been hailed as humanity's greatest tool for uncovering truth, faces this same fundamental problem. Every observation, every experiment, is mediated by human perception. Even the most rigorous scientific findings are based on interpretations of data, interpretations that are influenced by the limitations of human cognition and the biases of the scientists themselves. Science may reveal patterns in nature, but it cannot reveal ultimate truths. It can never tell you the entire story, because every piece of knowledge is framed by the perspective of the observer. This is the true horror of the human condition. We are trapped in a world of shifting perspectives, unreliable senses, and imperfect language. And in this world, truth becomes a cruel joke, a game played by the mind, where the goal is always just out of reach. You chase it, you grasp for it, but it slips through your fingers, dissolving into the haze of perception, distortion, and bias. So, ask yourself, if truth is nothing more than an illusion, a construct of the mind, then what is the point of seeking it? What does it mean to know anything at all, when all knowledge is ultimately subjective, filtered through the lens of your own perception? And if you can never truly know the truth, then what does that say about the nature of reality itself? Action 11. The eternal return of nothingness. What if every moment you've lived, every thought you've had, every decision you've made is not an irreversible path, but a loop, a cycle that repeats itself over and over, forever? What if your entire existence, with all its highs and lows, is nothing more than an endless repetition of the same events, actions, and choices, trapped in a loop of eternal recurrence? This unsettling idea was first proposed by the ancient philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche in his concept of the eternal return. Nietzsche asks us to imagine that everything we experience, everything we do, will be repeated infinitely, with no end, no escape. Every joy, every sorrow, every failure and triumph will be lived again and again, in exactly the same way, for eternity. What if you were doomed to relive the exact same life, the same mistakes, the same suffering, over and over, forever? How would you live your life knowing that nothing you do will ever truly matter, because it will simply be repeated endlessly? The existential weight of this concept is staggering. Nietzsche presents the eternal return not as a philosophical thought experiment, but as a test, an inquiry into the meaning of life itself. If you knew that your life would repeat eternally, would you live differently? Would you make the same choices, endure the same suffering, experience the same regrets? Or would you attempt to break free from the cycle, to escape the endless repetition of your actions? But here's the catch. Nietzsche's challenge is that there is no escape. The eternal return is not a metaphor. It is an inescapable truth about the nature of existence. Think about the implications for your own life. Each decision you make, each action you take, is part of this cycle. You may believe that you are moving forward, that your life is progressing towards some goal. But what if this forward motion is just a delusion? What if every path you choose leads to the same destination, over and over again? What if the seemingly infinite variety of human experience is just a mirage, a trick of perception, designed to make you believe that you are moving forward when, in reality, you are trapped in an eternal cycle? The idea of eternal recurrence also forces us to confront the very nature of time itself. We are taught to think of time as a linear progression, past, present, future. We believe that we are moving towards some final endpoint, that our actions have consequences, that our lives have meaning. But what if time is not linear at all? What if it is cyclical, repeating itself eternally, with no ultimate purpose or destination? This idea is not merely speculative. It is rooted in deep paradoxes of time and physics. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that the universe is slowly moving toward a state of maximum entropy, a state where all energy has dissipated, all matter is evenly spread out, and the universe becomes cold, dark, and lifeless. This eventual heat death of the universe suggests an end to time itself, an ultimate conclusion to all things. But could this end be nothing more than a momentary pause in a cycle, a reset, before the entire process begins again? And yet, the cycle of eternal recurrence is not just a cosmic event, it is a psychological reality. You experience it daily, in the repetition of thoughts, habits, and routines. You wake up each day, face the same challenges, make the same choices, and repeat the same patterns. How many of your actions are truly new, truly unique? How many of them are simply echoes of what you've done before, replayed in the same way, over and over again? The feeling of déjà vu, the sense that you've lived through a moment before, is a hint of this deeper truth. It's a fleeting glimpse into the possibility that time is not linear, that moments are repeating themselves, folding back upon each other. But déjà vu is just a brief flash. What if the entire life you're living is one big déjà vu, stretching out across the endless span of time, repeating without end? What does this mean for the notion of personal growth, of change, of transformation? If everything you experience is doomed to repeat, then how can you ever truly change? Are you merely a character in a play, trapped in a role you can never escape, doomed to recite the same lines, play out the same scenes, again and again, for eternity? The desire for progress, for self-improvement, becomes meaningless in the face of eternal recurrence. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you strive to become a better version of yourself, you will always end up in the same place, repeating the same mistakes. And yet, Nietzsche presents a challenge within this darkness. If you were to embrace the eternal return, to accept that your life will be lived again and again, would you live it differently? Could you learn to love your life in its endless repetition? Could you find meaning in the acceptance of nothingness, in the recognition that every moment, every action, every feeling will be experienced forever? But this acceptance is not a simple, tranquil surrender. It is a violent, existential confrontation with the reality of your existence. To accept the eternal return is to accept the futility of your every action, to realize that no matter what you do, it will always lead back to the same place, the same outcome. It is a horrifying, disorienting thought that nothing you do matters because it will all be undone, only to be done again, ad infinitum. And if everything is doomed to repeat, what does that say about the possibility of finding freedom or meaning in life? Are you truly free to make choices, or are you simply a puppet of fate, caught in a cosmic game you can never win? The eternal return is a question without an answer. It is a thought that loops back on itself, endlessly folding into oblivion. You can never escape it, because you can never escape yourself. The life you live will always return to you, again and again, until the end of time. So, if you must live your life over and over again, will you embrace the cycle, or will you search in vain for an escape that does not exist? Section 12. The illusion of progress. You have been taught to believe in progress, that the world is moving forward, improving, evolving, and that each generation builds upon the achievements of the last. From science to technology to society itself, you are told that humanity is constantly moving toward greater understanding, greater efficiency, and greater enlightenment. But what if this notion of progress is a lie? What if humanity's march toward the future is nothing more than a hollow illusion, a cruel joke played on those who seek meaning in the relentless passage of time? The idea of progress is deeply ingrained in human consciousness. You live with belief that the future will be better than the present, that the problems of today will be solved tomorrow, that each step forward brings you closer to a world of justice, peace, and prosperity. But is that true? Look around you. Has society truly progressed? Or are we simply repeating the same mistakes, the same cycles of violence, greed, and ignorance, dressed in new clothes? Every social advance, every technological breakthrough is quickly followed by new problems, new crises, and new conflicts. The more you solve, the more new challenges emerge. Consider the rise of modern technology. In many ways, technology has revolutionized the world, offering conveniences and advancements that previous generations could not have imagined. The internet, space exploration, medicine, each of these represents a monumental achievement. Yet, what has this progress truly brought? As technology advances, so too does the potential for destruction. Nuclear weapons, climate change, social isolation, surveillance. These are not the consequences of technological failure, but of its unchecked, unbalanced growth. Progress, it seems, is not a linear path leading to utopia, but a tangled web that ultimately leads to deeper entanglements. This disillusionment with progress is mirrored in the field of history. History, you are told, is the story of humanity's advancement from primitive tribes to modern civilizations. But when you examine it more closely, history reveals something far more disturbing: a cycle of violence, oppression, and collapse. Ancient empires rose and fell. Civilizations flourished only to crumble into decay. What was the point of all this so-called progress, when every empire, every civilization, eventually reaches its end? From the fall of Rome to the collapse of modern superpowers, history shows that progress is not a straight line, but a series of rises and falls, each one taking humanity through the same mistakes over and over again. And this cycle isn't just external, it's internal too. As individuals, we believe in personal progress. We seek self-improvement. We strive to become better versions of ourselves, to overcome our flaws and grow into something greater. But is this really progress? Think about the last time you attempted to change something about yourself. Whether it was quitting a bad habit, overcoming a fear, or gaining a new skill. Did you succeed? Maybe for a time. But did that change stick? Did you, in fact, progress? Or did you eventually find yourself falling back into the same patterns, the same struggles, the same flaws you thought you had overcome? The truth is, personal progress often feels more like an illusion than a real transformation. For every step forward, there is a corresponding step back. This is not to say that growth doesn't happen. It does on the surface. But true, lasting progress, the kind that transforms humanity or the individual into something profoundly different, is elusive. And the more you chase it, the more you realize that what you're chasing is always just out of reach. The future you imagine, the life you dream of, remains a distant ideal, forever unattainable. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes once argued that human life is a perpetual and restless desire for power after power that ceases only in death. This, he believed, was the driving force behind progress, an insatiable craving for more, for improvement, for betterment. But what if this endless desire for progress is not a force of nature, but a trap? What if the endless striving for something better is merely a way of distracting you from the uncomfortable truth that nothing ever truly changes, that no matter how much you strive, you are still bound by the same limitations, the same flaws, the same struggles that have plagued humanity for millennia. The myth of progress is, in many ways, a psychological defense mechanism, a way of making life bearable in a world that often seems to offer no real solutions. Progress gives you hope. It gives you something to strive for, a goal to reach. But what if that hope is a lie? What if the real truth is that nothing changes, that the very notion of progress is an illusion crafted by human minds in an attempt to find meaning in a meaningless world? And if progress is a lie, then what is left? What does it mean to live in a world that promises change, but delivers only more of the same? If you cannot trust in progress, then how do you make sense of your life? Do you simply continue striving, chasing the same empty goals, or do you abandon the illusion altogether and accept the truth of your existence, that nothing ever truly changes? If nothing changes, then what is the point of it all? What is the point of striving, of growing, of living, if every moment is just a brief echo of what has come before? Section 13. The void behind the mirror. You look into a mirror, and you see yourself. Or do you? You see an image, a reflection of the person you believe yourself to be. But what is that image really? Is it the true you? Or is it a mere distortion, an outward manifestation of the self that exists only in your mind? The question of identity, who you are, who you think you are, and who you really are has haunted philosophers for centuries. But what if the answer is far more disturbing than you can imagine? The mirror is not just a tool for reflection. It is a symbol of your existence. When you gaze into it, you are not merely observing your physical form. You are also observing the image you have constructed of yourself. The self you see in the mirror is a product of your mind, a mental construct, an illusion that has been shaped by your experiences, memories, desires, and societal expectations. What you think of as you is nothing more than a reflection of your internal narrative, a story you tell yourself about who you are. But what happens when you begin to question this narrative? What happens when the image in the mirror starts to crack and distort? What if the self you have built up over your lifetime is not the true self at all, but merely a mask you wear to navigate the world? Consider the concept of the false self, introduced by psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott. Winnicott suggested that in order to survive in a world full of external expectations, you create a false self, an adaptive persona that protects the true, vulnerable self hidden underneath. This false self is shaped by the demands of society, family, and culture. It is the version of you that others see, the version you present to the world in order to fit in, to gain approval, to survive. But beneath this facade lies the true self, which remains hidden, suppressed, and often inaccessible to your conscious mind. And what happens when the false self begins to feel more real than the true self? What happens when you lose touch with the deeper, authentic parts of yourself, buried beneath the layers of social conditioning and self-imposed expectations? The result is a profound sense of alienation, a feeling that you are no longer in touch with who you truly are, that you have become a stranger to yourself. You are left staring into the mirror, looking at an image that no longer feels like you. The reflection is familiar, but it is not the real you. This sense of alienation is further amplified by the psychological phenomenon known as depersonalization, where a person begins to feel detached from their own body or thoughts. They may experience themselves as an observer of their own life, watching their actions from a distance, as though they are living in a dream. This can occur during periods of extreme stress or trauma, but it also emerges when the self becomes fragmented, when the image you hold of yourself begins to fall apart, revealing a disorienting void behind it. Now, consider the possibility that the true self does not exist at all. What if there is no core, identity, no stable, unchanging essence that defines who you are? What if the self is not a solid, cohesive entity, but a collection of transient thoughts, experiences, and perceptions, constantly shifting and changing? This is the view held by many existential and Buddhist philosophers, who argue that the self is an illusion, a temporary construct created by the mind in an attempt to make sense of the chaos of existence. In this view, the you that you think you are is not a real, permanent entity, but an ephemeral, ever-changing process. If the self is an illusion, then what are you? You are not a singular, stable being. You are a constellation of fleeting thoughts and experiences, a pattern that arises and dissolves within the ever-shifting landscape of consciousness. There is no you behind the mirror. The reflection you see is not a true representation of your essence, it is a momentary manifestation of the processes occurring in your mind. And when you look deeper, when you peel away the layers of identity, what remains? Perhaps it is the void, the emptiness behind the mirror, the absence that lies beneath the surface of the self. In many ways, this is the most terrifying realization of all, that the you've spent your entire life constructing is a mirage, a fragile illusion. The more you seek it, the more it slips through your fingers. You are not who you think you are. You are an ever-changing, ever-shifting collection of experiences and thoughts. And if you are not who you think you are, then what does that say about the world you live in? If the self is an illusion, then is everything else you perceive also an illusion? What is real if the very essence of your identity is a phantom, a fleeting image in the mirror? If there is no true self to hold on to, then what is left? Can you exist without a stable sense of identity, or are you doomed to live forever in a state of existential drift, searching for something that can never be found? And if you can't grasp the self, then can you ever truly know who you are, or will you always be a reflection, trapped in a never-ending game of self-deception? Section 14. The abyss of free thought. You've been told that your mind is your own, that your thoughts are private, that you are in control of what you believe, think, and feel. But what if this is a lie? What if your thoughts are not truly your own, but are shaped, manipulated, and controlled by forces far beyond your awareness? What if your mind is not a sanctuary of free will, but a prison, a battleground for competing influences, hidden agendas, and psychological manipulation? In the world of psychology, the concept of cognitive biases reveals just how fragile and manipulable the human mind truly is. Cognitive biases are systematic patterns of deviation from rationality, where your judgments and decisions are influenced by factors that are not based on reality or reason. These biases are not merely flaws in thinking, they are built into the very structure of the human mind, shaping everything you believe and perceive. One of the most disturbing examples of this is the confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out information that confirms your pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing information that contradicts them. This bias locks you into a narrow, self-reinforcing worldview, where your beliefs become more entrenched over time, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. But what does this mean for your sense of autonomy? If your thoughts are constantly being shaped by subconscious biases, forces beyond your awareness, then are they really your thoughts at all? Are you truly free to think for yourself? Or are you simply following a script written by your past experiences, your upbringing, and your environment? And confirmation bias is only the beginning. What if your very sense of reality is being manipulated on a much larger scale by external forces that you cannot even begin to comprehend? In the modern world, mass media, advertising, social media, and political propaganda all work in tandem to shape your thoughts, opinions, and desires. These influences are subtle but pervasive, creating a constant stream of information designed to steer you in specific directions, to make you think certain things, to want certain products, to vote for certain candidates. You are bombarded with messages, some obvious, some insidious, that tell you what to believe, what to value, what to fear, and what to desire. This is not conspiracy theory, it's a well-documented fact of modern life. The very design of social media platforms is based on algorithms that curate the content you see, ensuring that you are exposed to ideas and opinions that reinforce your current beliefs, while filtering out those that challenge them. This creates echo chambers, where your thoughts become more and more insulated from the outside world, and where dissenting views are drowned out or ignored. The result is that you live in a carefully constructed reality, tailored to your preferences, your biases, and your psychological vulnerabilities. But what does it mean for your sense of autonomy when your thoughts, your desires, and your beliefs are being constantly shaped by these external forces? You may think that you are making independent, free choices, but in reality, you are merely reacting to a complex web of manipulations that guide your decisions without your even realizing it. Are you truly in control of your thoughts, or are they being puppeteered by unseen forces? This idea is not new. The philosopher Michel Foucault argued that power is not just something that is wielded by governments or institutions, it is woven into the very fabric of society, into the way we think and live. Foucault's concept of biopower describes how modern societies control individuals not through overt oppression, but through the subtle regulation of thoughts, behaviors, and desires. From the way we speak, to the way we dress, to the way we think about ourselves, we are constantly being influenced by social norms, expectations, and ideologies that shape our actions in ways we cannot easily escape. Consider the way you view yourself, your body, your identity, your worth. These ideas are not born from some intrinsic truth about who you are, but are constructed by the social forces around you. The ideal body, the ideal mind, the ideal lifestyle, they are all part of a larger societal framework that tells you what is normal, what is desirable, and what is acceptable. But these ideals are not natural. They are constructed by media, by culture, by the people in power who have a vested interest in shaping your desires and your sense of self. Even the concept of self-improvement is a product of this system. You are told that in order to be happy, successful, and fulfilled, you must constantly strive to be better, to grow, to improve. But what if this drive for self-improvement is just another form of control? What if the very idea of better is itself a construct, one that serves the interests of those in power, who profit from your constant desire to change, to consume, to conform? The darkest realization of all is that you may never truly know if you are thinking for yourself. Your thoughts, your desires, your sense of identity, they may not be your own, but a complex network of influences that extend far beyond your awareness. You may think you are free, but in reality, you are locked in a cage of your own making, a prisoner of your thoughts, a slave to the forces that control the very way you perceive the world. So, ask yourself, if your thoughts are not truly your own, if your mind is a battlefield for forces beyond your control, then what does it mean to be free? Are you truly thinking for yourself, or are you simply a puppet, dancing to the tune of unseen masters? Section 15. The absurdity of death. You are alive. You know this because you experience it, feel it, breathe it, think it. But what happens when the awareness of your own life begins to collide with the inescapable certainty of your death? It is in this collision, this clash between life's fleetingness and death's certainty, that the true horror of existence lies. Death, the end of all things, is inevitable, and yet it is something you cannot fully comprehend. And in your struggle to understand it, you may come to realize that death is not something that simply happens to you at the end of your life. It is, in a sense, woven into the fabric of your existence from the very beginning. The philosopher Albert Camus faced this paradox head-on in his exploration of the absurd. For Camus, the absurdity of life is born from the tension between your search for meaning and the universe's indifference to your existence. The more you strive to understand your life, more you are confronted with the stark reality that there is no inherent meaning, no grand cosmic plan, no ultimate purpose behind your existence. Life is arbitrary, fleeting, and unimportant in the grand scale of the cosmos. But death is not just an abstract concept. It is the one undeniable truth that will eventually confront you. Death is the great equalizer. No matter how rich, powerful, intelligent, or successful you are, death will come for you, just as it has come for every living being before you. It doesn't matter how many accomplishments you amass, how many people you impact, or how much you learn. In the end, all that will remain of you is a memory that will fade away, a mark on the earth that will eventually be erased. This realization can be terrifying. To confront your own mortality is to come face to face with the absurdity of existence. You are born, you live, and then you die. And in the space between those two events, you must somehow find meaning, even though it may not exist. Death renders all things temporary, fragile, and meaningless. The beauty of life, the joy of connection, the pursuit of knowledge, all of these are just brief sparks in the dark, fleeting moments that will eventually be swallowed by the eternal void. But it's not just the inevitability of death that makes life absurd, it's the fact that you can never truly prepare for it. You know death is coming, but you can never know when. The ambiguity of when and how you will die only deepens the absurdity. You can live your life filled with plans, goals, and dreams, but none of it matters in the face of death's unpredictability. Every moment you spend building your life, every second you invest in future plans, is a moment that edges you closer to the end. You cannot escape it, you cannot outrun it, and you cannot control it. Consider the way that society deals with death. We are trained to ignore it, to push it aside, to focus on the things we can control, things that will keep us alive for just a little longer. We engage in a constant cycle of distraction, chasing after wealth, fame, status, and success, all the while knowing that none of it will last. The more you focus on avoiding death, the more you must confront its certainty, and the more you try to avoid it, the more you realize that you are trapped in a paradox, a life that is defined by its inevitable end. Camus suggests that the only way to deal with this absurdity is to embrace it, to acknowledge that life has no ultimate meaning, no divine purpose, and yet, despite this, to continue living fully, to defy the absurd by living with passion, with commitment, with vigor, even when you know it will all end. But can you truly live fully, knowing that the end is coming? Can you truly embrace life in the face of its ultimate futility? This is the true horror of existence, not just that death is inevitable, but that life is so fragile, so fleeting, so utterly meaningless in the grand scale of the universe. Your actions, your thoughts, your life, none of it will last. The universe will continue, indifferent to your existence. And when you are gone, the universe will go on, unaffected, unchanged. Your death will be a momentary ripple in a vast, indifferent ocean. So, ask yourself, what is the point of living if everything you do will be erased by death? What is the point of struggling, striving, and seeking meaning in a world where death is the only certainty, and life is but a brief flicker in the eternal darkness? And if death is the only truth you can trust, then what does that say about the very nature of life itself? Section 16. The paradox of human progress. You believe in progress. You believe that humanity is capable of improving, of moving toward a better future, of evolving intellectually, morally, and socially. You believe that each generation makes strides toward a more enlightened, more just, more advanced world. But what if, in all of humanity's advancements, it has only been moving in circles, repeating the same mistakes, endlessly chasing after progress without ever truly escaping the underlying forces that drive it? Look back through history. Humanity has gone from primitive tribes to complex civilizations, from superstition to science, from the feudal systems of the past to the democratic ideals of today. Yet, despite all of this, the basic struggles of existence remain unchanged. War, inequality, injustice, suffering, these are as present today as they were in the earliest human societies. The tools have changed, the structures have evolved, but the fundamental human condition has remained remarkably similar. Consider the paradox of technological progress. You have advanced from the steam engine to artificial intelligence, from the horse-drawn carriage to the self-driving car, from handwritten letters to instant global communication. But with each advancement, you have also created new problems that are often as complex and intractable as those that came before. The advent of nuclear weapons brought the promise of unimaginable power, but it also brought the threat of global annihilation. The rise of the internet connected the world in ways never before possible, but it also birthed new forms of isolation, surveillance, and manipulation. Each breakthrough, each leap forward, seems to be accompanied by a corresponding crisis, a new set of existential threats. The same can be said for social progress. Human rights, gender equality, and racial justice have all made significant strides over the past century, yet systemic oppression, discrimination, and violence remain pervasive. The fight for equality is far from over, and the structures of power that perpetuate inequality continue to evolve, adapting to new circumstances while preserving the same core injustices. With every attempt to advance society, a new set of barriers arises, maintaining the status quo, ensuring that real progress remains an elusive goal. This is the paradox that lies at the heart of human existence. You are constantly moving forward, constantly striving for improvement, yet you never seem to break free from the cycles that define your reality. No matter how much you achieve, how much you learn, how much you evolve, the same fundamental problems persist. It's as though progress is nothing more than a temporary illusion, a fleeting moment of hope before the cycle begins anew. And this paradox extends beyond humanity as a whole. It touches on the individual as well. You strive to improve yourself, to grow, to become better. But the more you change, the more you realize that you are still bound by the same limitations, the same patterns, the same flaws. Each attempt at self-improvement is met with resistance, as if there is a force within you that prevents real change from ever taking root. The more you try to evolve, the more you come to understand that the very act of evolution is paradoxical. You cannot escape the self that holds you back, no matter how hard you try. This, too, is a feature of the human condition, the inability to escape your own nature. You are bound to repeat the same mistakes, to make the same choices, to live the same patterns, no matter how much you learn or grow. You are trapped in a cycle of progress that, while seeming to move forward, ultimately leads you back to where you began. And what does it mean for the individual to strive for progress in the face of this paradox? When you seek improvement, are you truly moving forward, or are you merely participating in a grand, cosmic game of make-believe? The endless pursuit of progress is a form of self-deception, a desperate attempt to escape the reality that no matter how much you achieve, no matter how much you advance, the essential problems of existence remain unchanged. So, what is the point of progress? If, after all your efforts, you simply return to the same place, facing the same existential dilemmas, what does it mean to move forward? And if humanity's progress is nothing more than a repetitive cycle, then how can you ever truly escape the forces that bind you? If progress is a mirage, an illusion that keeps you chasing after something that will always remain just out of reach, then what are you really progressing toward? And in this endless pursuit, what is left to believe in when you realize that all you've done is move in circles? Section 17. The end of meaning. You search for meaning. You seek it in your relationships, in your work, in your passions, in your beliefs. You tell yourself that meaning exists, that life has a purpose, and that your struggles are worthwhile. But what if meaning itself is an illusion? What if, in the end, meaning is nothing more than a temporary construction, an emotional crutch built to shield you from the terrifying reality that life is, in fact, meaningless? This is the central question posed by Existential. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who argued that life is inherently meaningless and that it is up to each individual to create their own meaning. But here lies the profound paradox. If meaning is something you create for yourself, then is it truly meaningful? Or is it merely a fiction, an artificial narrative that you weave to make sense of a world that refuses to provide any inherent meaning? Sartre's existentialism presents an unsettling truth, that meaning is not something to be found in the world, it is something you must impose on it. But if meaning is something you impose, then can it ever be truly real? Think about the rituals you perform every day, the things you do because they matter, because they give you purpose. You wake up, go to work, care for your loved ones, chase your dreams, and live your life with the belief that these actions are meaningful. But what happens when you realize that, from the perspective of the universe, none of this matters? The universe, in its vastness, is indifferent to your existence, to your actions, to your desires. The stars do not notice your struggles. The galaxies do not care about your joys. In the grand scheme of things, your life is a brief, inconsequential flicker, a speck of dust in the eternal darkness. This realization can be crushing. It calls into question everything you've ever believed about your purpose, your worth, your identity. What is the point of striving for success, for happiness, for love, when the universe itself does not care? What is the point of making a difference, of changing the world, when time itself is fleeting and the world will eventually be consumed by the cold void of entropy? But even worse than this, perhaps, is the realization that you are not the first to face this existential crisis. Humanity has grappled with this question for centuries, and yet no answer has emerged. The search for meaning, whether in religion, philosophy, or personal achievement, has yielded no definitive truth. Each answer is as fleeting as the last, each belief as fragile as the next. You are left with a sense of futility, a nagging doubt that all of your efforts, all of your pursuits, will ultimately be swallowed by the abyss of nothingness. In fact, many thinkers have argued that the search for meaning itself is the very thing that traps you in your existential prison. The pursuit of meaning, they argue, is not a path toward enlightenment, but a form of denial, a way of avoiding the crushing weight of the realization that life has no inherent purpose. By seeking meaning, you are only creating a temporary distraction, a fragile illusion to make your existence feel bearable. Consider the concept of nihilism, the belief that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. Nihilism is often seen as a bleak, hopeless philosophy, but it is also a liberating one. If life has no inherent meaning, then you are free to create your own meaning, to live without the constraints of societal expectations or the pressure of living up to some grand cosmic plan. But this freedom is not without its cost, for in the absence of meaning, you are left with the terrifying freedom to create your own meaning and no guarantee that you will succeed. And so, you return to the question, what is the point? If meaning is something you must invent for yourself, then how can you ever know if it's truly meaningful? Can you ever be certain that your life has purpose? Or are you simply constructing a story to make yourself feel less insignificant? Can you trust your own creations, or are they merely illusions, fragile narratives that dissipate the moment you look too closely? The existential weight of this question is unbearable. How can you live in a world where meaning is fleeting, where the search for purpose is as empty as the void that surrounds you? Can you ever escape the feeling that, no matter how much you strive to find meaning, you are only chasing an illusion? And if meaning is nothing more than a construct, an illusion you cling to in the face of an indifferent universe, then what does it say about the very nature of existence itself? If there is no meaning, no purpose, no grand design, then what are you left with? Is it better to accept the nothingness, to live in the void, or to continue searching for meaning, knowing that you may never find it? And if you can't escape meaninglessness, then what is left to live for? Section 18. The burden of awareness. There is a moment in every life, a moment when the full weight of existence crashes down upon you. You feel it, deep within your chest, a tightening, a suffocation, as though you've suddenly become too aware of the vastness of the world, of the fragility of life, of the inevitable, uncaring death that waits for all. This moment of awareness, when the illusion of safety, of stability, of meaning slips away, is the moment when you come face to face with the true horror of existence. And once you've experienced it, there is no turning back. This burden of awareness is what separates you from the animals, from the unaware masses who live their lives in blissful ignorance. You are conscious of your own consciousness, aware that you are aware, and in that awareness, you are confronted with the most terrifying truth of all. You are fully and irrevocably alone in the universe. At the core of this realization lies the paradox of human existence. You are aware of your life, your thoughts, your actions, but you are also aware of their futility, their impermanence. The more you become aware of the world, the more you see the infinite complexity, the infinite suffering, and the infinite meaninglessness that stretches out before you. The more you know, the more you realize how little you truly understand, how powerless you are to affect the forces that govern your existence. Philosophers have long wrestled with the implications of this burden. In his work, Being and Nothingness, Sartre discusses the concept of bad faith, the act of self-deception people engage in to avoid confronting the existential truths that lie at the heart of human existence. To live in bad faith is to pretend that life has inherent meaning, that there is a higher purpose to your actions, to your suffering. It is the act of lying to yourself in order to avoid the crushing weight of awareness. But no matter how hard you try to lie, the truth remains. Life is a fleeting, temporary blip in an indifferent, vast universe. You are here for a moment, and then you are gone. Everything you do will be erased, forgotten, lost to time. Yet, despite this realization, you continue to search for meaning. You create narratives, you pursue goals, you cling to beliefs, anything to stave off the awareness of your own insignificance. But with each step, you are confronted by the question that haunts your every waking moment. What is the point? If everything is temporary, if nothing truly matters, then why do you continue to live, to strive, to hope? This is the burden of awareness. The more you awaken to the reality of your existence, the more you realize how powerless you are to change it. You may build a career, raise a family, achieve great things, but all of it is nothing more than a brief flash, a moment in the eternal void. And the more you know, the more you are aware that it is all fleeting, all doomed to disappear in the end. The more you seek control, the more you realize that control is an illusion. Take, for instance, the great paradox of knowledge. The more you learn about the world, the more you realize how much you don't know. The pursuit of truth, of understanding, becomes a never-ending cycle, a cycle in which every answer leads to more questions, more confusion. The more you search for meaning, the more you become aware of the inherent meaninglessness of life. The search itself becomes a form of self-deception, a way of distracting yourself from the overwhelming truth that nothing has meaning, that nothing will ever truly matter in the end. This existential burden manifests itself in countless ways. It appears in the anxiety that grips you when you look at the future, uncertain of what lies ahead. It appears in the fear of death, the awareness that your life is finite and that you can never escape it. It appears in the way you look at others, wondering if they, too, are burdened by the same crushing awareness, or if they live in blissful ignorance, untouched by the existential dread that plagues your every thought. And yet, despite all of this, you continue to live. You continue to push forward, to search, to question, to create meaning where none exists. But why? Is it because you cannot bear the thought of giving in to the void, of accepting the true insignificance of your life? Or is it because, in some deep hidden part of you, you refuse to acknowledge the absurdity of existence? You fight against the truth, but the truth remains, gnawing at you, always present, always just beyond your reach. So, ask yourself, what is the point of continuing to live in the face of such overwhelming knowledge? If every moment is doomed to fade, every action to be erased, then why do you persist in this relentless pursuit of meaning? And if you cannot escape the awareness of your own insignificance, then how can you live without succumbing to the crushing weight of it? What do you do when the burden of awareness becomes too much to bear? Section 19. The collapse of language. You speak, you write, you communicate with others, using the tool that is supposed to give meaning to your world, language. You believe that through language, you can connect, understand, and convey your thoughts and experiences. But what if language is not the tool of clarity you believe it to be? What if, instead of illuminating the world, it only serves to distort, to obfuscate, and to deceive? Language, in its most basic form, is nothing more than a system of symbols, sounds, words, and phrases that are arbitrarily linked to objects, actions, and concepts. These symbols are not the things themselves, they are mere representations. When you say the word tree, for example, you are not referring to the actual tree, it's a concept, a label, a construction. And what happens when that construction fails to capture the true essence of what it represents? What happens when words fall short, when the very medium you use to understand the world begins to reveal its own limitations? The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein recognized this problem in his later work, famously stating, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." Language, according to Wittgenstein, is not a perfect tool for describing reality. It is constrained by the very nature of human thought. The words you use to describe your experiences are not objective truths. They are interpretations, shaped by the limitations of your mind, culture, and perception. The meaning you attribute to any word is subjective, colored by your experiences, your biases, and the context in which you use it. In this sense, language does not reflect the world, it distorts it. Consider how you communicate with others. When you speak, you assume that the other person understands you, that they share your mental model of the world. But how can they? Your experience of reality is uniquely yours, filtered through your senses, your thoughts, and your emotions. The words you use to describe your inner experience are, at best, approximations of the truth. They cannot fully capture the richness, the depth, or the nuance of what you are trying to convey. And even if the other person shares your language, your words will never mean exactly the same thing to them as they do to you. Each word is a fragile bridge between minds, a bridge that is always incomplete, always imperfect. This problem becomes even more apparent when you consider the limits of language in relation to abstract concepts. You may use words like love, freedom, truth, or justice to describe powerful ideas, but what do they really mean? Are they universal concepts, or are they shaped by cultural, historical, and personal contexts? What is love, really? What is freedom? Can you ever truly define these concepts in a way that captures their essence? Or are these just empty words, placeholders for ideas that are too complex, too multifaceted to be contained in any one symbol? Perhaps the greatest irony of language is that it creates the illusion of understanding while simultaneously ensuring that you can never truly know or communicate anything with perfect clarity. Every word you speak is a distortion of reality, a simplification of a far more complicated and intricate world. Language provides the appearance of connection, of shared meaning. but it can never bridge the full gap between minds. What you say is never exactly what you mean, and what you understand is never the full picture. You live in a world of fragmented, partial truths, unable to communicate your deepest experiences or fully grasp the experiences of others. The act of translation, whether it's translating between languages or translating thoughts into words, further highlights the inherent flaws in language. A word or concept in one language often cannot be fully expressed in another. It's a fact that is both banal and profound. Every language is its own world, a unique structure that shapes how its speakers experience reality. Some ideas are simply untranslatable. There are concepts in languages like Japanese or Inuit that have no direct equivalent in English, and this reveals a deeper truth. Language is not just a tool for communication, but a lens through which you view the world. Each language shapes its speaker's understanding of the world, and when you translate, you are not simply exchanging words, you are exchanging entire worldviews. This flaw in language extends beyond communication between people. It impacts your own understanding of the world. The thoughts you have are shaped by language. You cannot think without words. Your perception of reality is constrained by the language you use to describe it. And yet, language itself is inadequate to fully express the complexity of your inner experience. You think in words, but those words can never capture the full depth of your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations. You are left with the frustrating reality that you cannot truly express yourself, that you can never fully communicate what it means to be you. Now, consider the possibility that language, the very tool you use to shape your reality, is also the thing that keeps you from fully understanding it. What if the words you use to define your world, your identity, your values, your beliefs, are not accurate reflections of the world itself, but mere constructs that limit your ability to see the truth? What if language isn't a window to reality, but a barrier that distorts and confines it? And this leads to a chilling thought. If you cannot trust language, if you cannot trust the very words you use to understand the world, then what can you trust? What is left when the most basic tool of communication, the very medium through which you perceive and interact with reality, becomes a prison? If language fails to capture the essence of truth, if it distorts reality rather than reveals it, then can you ever truly know anything about the world? And if language can never fully express the depths of your experience, what does that say about your ability to ever truly know yourself? Section 20. The absurdity of memory. You cling to your memories because they define you. They tell you who you are, where you've been, and who you have become. Your memories are the thread that ties your past to your present, shaping your identity, your relationships, and your worldview. But what if memory itself is not the reliable, fixed record you believe it to be? What if the very essence of your selfhood, the memories you hold dear, is nothing more than a fragile, malleable illusion? Memory, like everything else in your life, is not a perfect reflection of reality. It is a reconstruction, an interpretation of events that is shaped by countless factors: emotion, time, perspective, and even the simple act of remembering itself. The more you remember, the more distorted the memory becomes. Each time you recall an event, your brain reshapes it, fills in gaps, and sometimes outright changes the details. Your memories are not static files, sitting in some mental vault, waiting to be accessed. They are fluid, shifting, and ever-evolving. One of the most disturbing revelations about memory comes from the work of psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, who has shown how easily memories can be manipulated. Through the simple suggestion of false information, Loftus and her colleagues have been able to implant entire false memories in people's minds, memories of events that never actually happened. In some studies, participants have been convinced that they were lost in a shopping mall or involved in a car accident, events that never took place but felt as real to them as any true memory. This phenomenon is not just an academic curiosity, it has real-world implications. It speaks to the terrifying truth that your memories may not be trustworthy at all. What you remember about your past, the relationships, the milestones, the defining moments, may not be accurate representations of what actually happened. They are stories, written by your mind, shaped by the filters of emotion, desire, and personal bias. Consider the concept of false memory syndrome, where people remember events that did not occur, sometimes with vivid detail. These false memories can be so compelling that individuals reorganize their entire sense of self around them. If your mind can fabricate memories with such conviction, then what happens to the very notion of identity? Who are you if your memories, the very foundation of your selfhood, can be distorted, fabricated, or lost? But even without deliberate manipulation, memory is inherently unreliable. Psychologist Daniel Schachter's work on memory's 7 sins highlights how easily our memories can be influenced. Memory is prone to transience, absent-mindedness, misattribution, suggestibility, bias, persistence, and blocking. Each of these sins leads to distortions in how you recall events. Your memory is not an accurate record of the past, but a reconstruction, subject to change and decay over time. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of memory is the phenomenon of recovered memories. Many people who have repressed traumatic experiences have later recovered memories of these events, only to question their authenticity. Were these memories repressed for a reason, or were they created in the subconscious mind to explain feelings of pain, guilt, or confusion? The line between what is real and what is fabricated becomes blurred, and this creates a profound sense of uncertainty about your past, yourself, and your very existence. In addition to all of this, your memory is also influenced by the constant stream of information you are exposed to. Every experience you have, every interaction you engage in, leaves an imprint on your mind. But as you move forward in life, these memories begin to fade, replaced by new experiences, new relationships, and new information. What remains of your past is not a perfect record, but a shadow of what once was constantly shifting, fading, and being reshaped by the passage of time. And yet, despite all of this, you continue to trust your memories. You rely on them to define who you are, to shape your understanding of the world, and to guide your decisions. But the more you think about it, the more you realize you cannot trust your memories. They are not reliable. They are fleeting, malleable, and deeply subjective. And if your memories are unreliable, then what does that say about your understanding of yourself, of your past, and of your place in the world? How can you trust your own mind when it distorts and alters your memories without your even realizing it? What happens when the very foundation of your identity, your memories, falls apart, revealing that what you thought you knew about yourself is nothing more than a collection of fragments, each one as unreliable as the next? What are you left with when your past is no longer a trusted record of your life, but a series of shifting illusions? Section 21. The illusion of free. Well, you are told that you are free, that you control your destiny, that you are the master of your own choices. But what if this idea of freedom is a mere illusion? What if your choices, your desires, your very sense of self are not yours at all, but are instead the result of forces beyond your control, forces that you cannot even begin to comprehend? What if you are nothing more than a puppet, dancing on strings that you cannot see, making choices that have already been decided for you? The concept of free will is central to how you understand yourself and your place in the world. You believe that you are in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your decisions. You believe that you make choices based on your desires, your goals, and your reasoning. But what if the truth is far more disturbing, that the sense of control you believe you have is merely an illusion, a story your mind tells you to make sense of the chaos that surrounds you? This realization is not new. Philosophers and scientists have long debated the question of free will, and many have concluded that it is not as real as you've been led to believe. Determinism, the idea that all events, including human actions, are determined by prior causes, has been around for centuries. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice." He was acknowledging the ever-changing nature of existence, suggesting that your thoughts and actions are not the result of your independent will, but of an ongoing chain of events, stretching back to the beginning of time. This idea has been taken further by modern neuroscientists, who argue that free will is nothing more than an illusion created by your brain. In one famous experiment conducted by Benjamin Libet, participants were asked to make a simple decision whether or not to move their hand, and their brain activity was measured as they did so. What Libet discovered was that the brain showed signs of activity before the participants were consciously aware of their decision. In other words, their brains were making the decision before they even realized it. If the brain is making decisions before you are even aware of them, then what does that say about your control over your own life? Are you truly in charge of your thoughts, Or are they simply the result of neural processes that are outside your awareness? And if your brain is already determining your actions before you have any conscious awareness of them, then can you ever truly say that you have free will? The idea of determinism challenges everything you believe about yourself. You've been taught that you are the author of your own story, that your choices are what shape your life. But what if, in reality, you are merely a passenger, carried along by the forces of nature, your genes, your environment, and the choices made by those who came before you? Your actions may feel like choices, but are they really? Or are they simply the inevitable result of your past experiences, your biology, and the complex web of influences that surround you? This idea is further complicated by the findings in modern psychology. Cognitive biases, the ways your mind distorts and shapes your perceptions, play a significant role in your decision-making. You may believe that you are making rational, free decisions, but in reality, your thoughts are constantly being shaped by unconscious biases, emotional influences, and social pressures. Every decision you make is colored by these invisible forces, making it nearly impossible to ever truly know if your choices are your own or if they are simply the result of external manipulations. The most disturbing part of this is that you can never truly escape the forces that shape you. From the moment you are born, you are conditioned by the environment you grow up in, the culture you are immersed in, the values you are taught. You are a product of everything that has come before you. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your desires, they are not the result of your free will, but the product of a vast, intricate network of influences that you cannot control. And yet, you continue to believe in the myth of free will. You continue to cling to the idea that you are in control of your life, that your choices matter, that you are the master of your own fate. But in doing so, you are only deceiving yourself. You are not free. You are trapped in a web of determinism, controlled by forces far beyond your understanding. So ask yourself, if free will is an illusion, if your choices are not truly yours, then what does it mean to live a life of choice? What happens when you realize that your thoughts, your desires, your actions are not your own? And if you cannot escape the forces that shape you, then how can you ever truly say that you are free? If you are not the author of your own story, then who is? And if someone else is pulling the strings, then what is left for you to do? Section 22. The futility of knowledge. You have spent your life searching for knowledge. You've been taught that knowledge is power, that understanding the world around you will provide you with control, security, and meaning. But what if knowledge is not the key into enlightenment? What if the more you learn, the more you realize that true understanding is unattainable, and that all you are left with is the bitter taste of futility? At the heart of human progress lies the belief that knowledge is the path to improvement, that the more you know, the more you can change the world for the better. But what happens when you realize that no matter how much you learn, no matter how many discoveries you make, the universe is so vast and so complex that your knowledge will always be limited? Knowledge is infinite, and yet your capacity to understand it is finite. No matter how much you know, there is always more to learn and more that you will never be able to comprehend. This is the paradox of knowledge. The more you seek to understand, the more you realize how little you actually know. Take science. For example, the pursuit of knowledge about the natural world. Over the past few centuries, humanity has made incredible strides in understanding the universe. From the discovery of the laws of physics to the mapping of the human genome, we have uncovered mysteries that were once thought to be beyond our reach. Yet, for every answer we uncover, new questions arise, questions that seem to defy comprehension. Quantum mechanics, for instance, has revealed a world that is fundamentally alien to our everyday experience. Subatomic particles behave in ways that challenge the very laws of classical physics. They can exist in multiple states at once, interact instantaneously across vast distances, and seem to be influenced by the mere act of observation. The more scientists uncover about the quantum realm, the more they realize that the universe operates on principles that are deeply counterintuitive and impossible to fully grasp. And then there is the issue of consciousness. Despite decades of research, scientists and philosophers have yet to explain how subjective experience arises from the physical brain. The hard problem of consciousness remains as mysterious as ever. How can a collection of neurons firing in the brain give rise to the rich tapestry of sensations, emotions, and self-awareness that make up your experience of being alive? Every attempt to understand consciousness only leads to more questions. more dead ends. The more you seek to understand the mind, the more you realize that true understanding may be beyond your grasp. This same paradox extends to history. You spend your life studying the past, seeking to understand the forces that have shaped human civilization. But no matter how much you learn, the past remains elusive. It is impossible to truly know what happened, because history is always shaped by the perspectives of those who tell it. Every historical account is colored by bias, by the limitations of memory, and by the passage of time. You can never know the past in its entirety. All you have are fragments that are constantly being rewritten and reinterpreted. And then there is the question of the future. No matter how much knowledge you acquire, the future remains unknowable. You can make predictions, you can analyze data, and you can extrapolate trends, but the future is unpredictable, chaotic, and subject to forces beyond your understanding. Every attempt to plan for the future is an exercise in uncertainty, because the future is never as clear as you want it to be. It slips through your fingers, no matter how tightly you try to hold on. So, if knowledge is limitless, but your capacity to comprehend it is finite, then what is the point of seeking knowledge at all? If every answer leads to more questions, if every discovery leads to more mystery, then how can you ever know anything for certain? Knowledge becomes not a path to truth, but a road that leads in circles, always returning to the same questions, the same uncertainties. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you truly understand. The pursuit of knowledge becomes a futile exercise, an endless chase after something that can never be fully grasped. Each new discovery is a reminder of how much is still unknown, and each answer brings with it the awareness of 1,000 unanswered questions. In the end, knowledge is not the key to freedom, or to meaning, or to control. It is a cage, a never-ending loop of questions and uncertainties that you can never escape. The more you seek to understand the world, the more you come to realize that you will never fully understand it. And in that realization lies the deepest futility of all, the realization that true knowledge is unattainable, and that all your efforts to grasp it will ultimately be in vain. So ask yourself, what happens when you realize that knowledge is not the path to truth, but the path to endless uncertainty? What do you do when you understand that no matter how much you learn, you will never truly know? And if you cannot know the world, then what does it mean to exist in it? Section 23. The illusion of control. You've been taught that you can control your life, that through willpower, planning, and effort, you can shape your future, dictate your destiny, and overcome obstacles. You are led to believe that you are the master of your fate, the captain of your ship. But what if control itself is an illusion, a comforting narrative you tell yourself to ward off the terror of your own helplessness? What if, in reality, control is something you can never truly possess, and all of your actions, your choices, are merely the result of forces beyond your comprehension? This is not simply a philosophical notion, it is an unsettling truth revealed by science, psychology, and even the very way we experience life. From the moment you are born, you are subject to forces beyond your control. The genetic lottery that determined your body and mind, the environment that shaped your upbringing, the culture that influenced your beliefs and desires. Even your choices, your actions, are not entirely your own. You may believe that you are freely deciding what to do, but the truth is that your brain is making decisions for you long before you are consciously aware of them. The work of neuroscientist Benjamin Libet has demonstrated this startling reality. In his experiments, Libet found that the brain shows signs of preparing for a voluntary action before the person becomes consciously aware of their intention to act. The brain, it seems, is constantly making decisions for you, with your conscious mind only becoming aware of those decisions after they've already been set in motion. If your brain is already initiating actions before you even realize it, then how can you claim to have control over them? Are you the one truly deciding, or are you simply witnessing the decisions your brain has already made for you? This loss of control extends beyond the brain. The external world is full of forces that shape your life, forces that you cannot predict, cannot avoid, and cannot control. Economic systems, social structures, political forces, these external influences dictate much of what happens in your life. You may believe that you have agency, that you can make choices that will lead to success or happiness, but how much of that is really in your hands? The job you have, the city you live in, the people you interact with, so much of it is shaped by systems that are far beyond your personal influence. You are a small player in a vast, interconnected web of forces that move according to their own logic, indifferent to your desires. Even more chilling is the realization that much of your life is governed by the subconscious. You are not even aware of the countless decisions you make on a daily basis. Your habits, your preferences, your reactions, these automatic responses are shaped by your past experiences, your biology, and your environment. You may believe you are acting consciously, but much of what you do is driven by processes that you are not aware of. You are not the conscious agent you think you are. You are a passenger, riding along in a body and mind that are constantly making decisions without your input. The terrifying implication of this is that even your most deeply held beliefs, the values you live by, the goals you pursue are not entirely your own. They have been shaped by forces outside of your control. From the moment you are born, you are conditioned by society, by your family, by the media you consume, and by the educational systems that mold your thoughts. You may believe that your beliefs are the result of independent thought, but in reality, they are the product of a complex web of influences, many of which you are not even aware of. But even more unsettling is the realization that, as much as you strive for control, the future is always uncertain. You can plan, you can prepare, you can make decisions, but in the end, you cannot control the outcome. The future is inherently unpredictable, shaped by forces and events that are beyond your comprehension. No matter how hard you try to control your life, you cannot predict what will happen. An accident, a chance encounter, a sudden illness, these are the things that can derail your best-laid plans. And in the face of such uncertainty, what does control really mean? If the future is always slipping away from your grasp, if your decisions are shaped by forces you cannot understand, then what is left for you to control? The more you try to control, the more you realize that control itself is a myth. It is a comforting illusion, a story you tell yourself to make life feel less chaotic, less random, and less terrifying. But when you peel back the layers of this illusion, you are left with the unsettling truth. You are not in control. You are at the mercy of forces beyond your understanding, forces that shape your thoughts, your actions, your desires, and ultimately, your life. And so, the question must be asked, what happens when you finally realize that you are not in control? When you accept that the illusion of control is the only thing that has kept you sane, what happens when you confront the truth that you are simply a passenger in your own life, subject to the whims of biology, society, and chance? If you cannot control your life, then what can you truly control? And if everything you do is merely a reaction to forces beyond your comprehension, then who are you, really? Section 24. The Paradox of the Infinite. You've been taught that the universe is finite, that time and space have boundaries, that there are limits to what can be known, what can be achieved. But what if the truth is far more disorienting? What if the universe-time itself goes on forever, beyond the grasp of human understanding, beyond the limits of your imagination? What if the very idea of limits, of boundaries, is an illusion, and the universe is an infinite expanse, stretching out in every direction, with no end in sight? The concept of infinity is one of the most unsettling ideas in both philosophy and science. It seems simple at first. Infinity is just forever, an endless stretch of time, space, or quantity. But when you attempt to truly grasp it, the infinite becomes not a concept to embrace, but a mind-bending, soul-crushing paradox. Mathematics provides a glimpse into the terror of infinity. Consider the idea of the infinite set an unending collection of elements, where no matter how many elements you count, there are always more to count. Think of the number line. From 0 to infinity, you can always add one more, and the line never ends. This isn't just a trick of numbers, it's a fundamental aspect of reality. But what happens when you try to understand infinity in relation to time, to existence, to the universe itself? Cosmologists have long struggled with the concept of an infinite universe. If the universe is infinite, then it has no boundary, no edge, no ultimate point at which it ends. This means that everything you know, the stars, the galaxies, the very space you inhabit, is part of an infinite expanse. But if the universe is infinite, then where does that leave you? Does anything truly matter in a universe so vast, so eternal, that it makes your existence seem utterly insignificant? The thought of an infinite universe makes every action, every choice, every life, appear as a fleeting, inconsequential speck in an endless sea of existence. And yet, there is another paradox that arises when we think about infinity, the infinite regress. The idea that if everything has a cause, then the chain of causes stretches back infinitely, with no true starting point. What came before the Big Bang? Was there an infinite number of universes that came before this one, each one creating and destroying in an endless cycle? Or is the concept of before meaningless in an infinite universe? If time itself is infinite, then what does it mean to speak of beginnings or ends? How can there be a start if time stretches out forever without beginning or end? The more you try to trace the origins of the universe, the more you are forced to confront the terrifying possibility that everything and nothing has always existed in one form or another for eternity. This paradox extends to the concept of your own life. You live in a universe that stretches out forever, yet your existence is brief, temporary, and seemingly insignificant. The very concept of a lifetime becomes absurd in the context of infinity. What is the value of your individual life when you are but a fleeting moment in the infinite span of time? What does it mean to be born, to live, and to die, when time stretches out infinitely before and after you? Does your existence matter at all in a universe that will continue long after you are gone? Consider, too, the psychological toll of infinity. If you truly grasp the concept of infinite time and space, it can be paralyzing. The human mind is not built to comprehend infinity. It can only imagine what it knows, the finite, the limited. Infinity is an idea that cannot be fully understood or even truly conceived. It's a void that swallows your thoughts, a chasm of thought that pulls you deeper into existential despair. When you think of infinity, you are not simply thinking about an unending number of stars in the sky or an eternal stretch of time. You are confronted with the impossibility of ever truly grasping the vastness of reality. You are trapped in a universe that you cannot understand, that you can never fully comprehend, and that will continue regardless of your existence or your understanding. The infinite is not a source of comfort, but a terrifying reminder of the limits of human experience. You are, in a sense, powerless in the face of infinity. Your life is a brief flash in the eternal span of time, and no matter how much you strive, no matter how much you learn, you will never touch the mendation. Infinity renders your efforts meaningless, because there will always be more stars, more time, more events stretching on forever. So, ask yourself, what happens when you realize that everything you know, everything you are, exists in the shadow of infinity? What happens when you grasp the terror of an endless universe, a universe where your existence is but a momentary spark in the eternal night? If the universe is infinite, what does that say about your place in it? Can you ever truly understand your own existence, or will you always be lost in the vast, uncaring expanse of infinity? Section 25. The horror of human meaninglessness. You've spent your life searching for meaning. You've been taught that your existence has purpose, that you are part of something larger than yourself, that your actions, your relationships, and your choices matter in the grand scheme of things. But what if all of that is a lie? What if your search for meaning is itself meaningless? What if the pursuit of purpose is not the key to a fulfilling life, but merely a distraction from the terrifying truth that nothing has inherent meaning? The existential crisis is not a rare, fleeting moment of doubt. It is the reality that underpins human existence. Philosophers have long grappled with the question of meaning, and many, like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, have arrived at the uncomfortable conclusion that life has no inherent purpose. There is no divine plan, no grand design to your existence. The universe is indifferent to your struggles, your joys, your aspirations. In a cosmos so vast, so cold, and so uncaring, your individual life is insignificant, a fleeting spark in the eternal darkness. The more you try to find meaning, the more you realize that meaning is a construct. You are not born with a built-in sense of purpose. You are not part of a larger cosmic plan. You must create your own meaning, if you can. But how do you create meaning in the world that is inherently devoid of it? How do you give purpose to a life that, in the grand scheme of the universe, has no lasting significance? This is the core of the existential dilemma, the realization that meaning must be invented, not discovered. The very act of searching for meaning is an act of self-deception, a way of avoiding the crushing reality of a purposeless universe. But even this act of self-deception is fraught with danger. The more you seek meaning, the more you confront the fact that you can never truly find it. You may create a narrative for your life, a story that helps you feel that your actions are worthwhile, that your existence has value. But this narrative is just that, a story, a fiction, a temporary construct that crumbles in the face of the eternal void. The idea of meaninglessness is deeply terrifying, and yet it is liberating. If there is no inherent meaning in life, then you are free to create your own. But this freedom is not as empowering as it may sound. It comes with the realization that there is no universal guide, no absolute truth that can tell you what to do with your life. You are free to choose your path, but you are also burdened by the knowledge that no matter what you choose, it will ultimately be insignificant. Every choice you make is ultimately meaningless, because the very notion of meaning is a human invention, a fragile construct that dissolves in the face of death. And death, inevitable, indifferent, final looms over this whole existential struggle. No matter how much meaning you create in your life, no matter how many accomplishments you amass or relationships you forge, death will come, and it will erase all of it. The universe will continue, indifferent to your existence, and all of your efforts will be wiped away by time. In the end, you will be forgotten, just as every person before you has been forgotten. The world will continue, and you will be gone, leaving nothing behind but the faintest memory, in the minds of those who knew you. This is the ultimate horror, not that your life has no meaning, but that the meaning you create is fleeting, temporary, and ultimately inconsequential. In the face of death, everything you do will fade, and the universe will remain unchanged, untouched by your brief existence. And yet, you cannot help but try. You cannot help but search for meaning, even in the face of its futility. You create goals, ambitions, and dreams, all in an attempt to convince yourself that your life matters. But the more you strive, the more you come to realize that you are building castles on sand, creating something that will eventually crumble into nothingness. The meaning you create is temporary, and the universe will continue without it. So ask yourself, what is the point of living a life in search of meaning, when meaning itself is an illusion? What happens when you realize that the very pursuit of meaning is a distraction, a temporary fix that can never fill the void? What happens when you confront the fact that your existence is, in the grand scale of the universe, utterly meaningless? If your life is without inherent meaning, then what is left? And if you cannot find meaning in your life, what is the point of continuing to search for it? Final collapse. Conclusion. The nothingness beyond all. You've made the journey with me, stepping deeper into the abyss with each section, each realization. And now, as the dust of these truths settles, you are left with the most profound, terrifying question of all. What is left? After everything has been shattered, the illusion of control, the promise of meaning, the certainty of self, what remains in the wake of your understanding? You sought knowledge, and you were confronted with the paradox that every answer leads to more questions. You sought to understand the universe, and all you found was a vast, indifferent expanse, a place where your existence is nothing more than a fleeting speck in the cosmic void. You sought to know the truth, but truth itself turned out to be elusive, a construct shaped by the limitations of your mind, language, and perception. You sought to find meaning in your life, but what you discovered was that meaning is not inherent. It is something you create, a fragile narrative you weave to make sense of a universe that offers no inherent purpose. And yet, even this search for meaning is fraught with absurdity, for the very act of searching implies a desperate need for something that cannot be found. In the end, you are left with nothing. No control, no meaning, no certainty. You are left with a profound, unshakable awareness of your own insignificance, a consciousness that is fully aware of its fleeting, fragile existence, staring into a universe that will go on long after you are gone, uncaring, untouched. But in this nothingness, there is something else, the brutal, violent freedom of acceptance. The realization that there is nothing to grasp, nothing to hold on to, nothing to prove. In this collapse, there is no salvation, no redemption. There is no higher purpose to life, no greater meaning to discover. The only thing left is the raw, unfiltered truth of existence, cold, unyielding, and infinite. So, ask yourself one final question. What happens when you can no longer hide from the abyss, when all your illusions have been stripped away and you are left staring into the void? Will you shrink from it, retreat back into the comfort of falsehoods, or will you finally embrace the nothingness, accept that your search for meaning has been in vain, and stand naked in the face of the infinite emptiness? For this, dear listener, is the final collapse, the moment when you come to realize that you were never in control, that the universe has no meaning, and that the self you've built is a fragile illusion. And in the face of this ultimate truth, you must decide, will you crumble beneath it, or will you stare back, unblinking, into the nothingness?